ESPN Esports has officially reported that Activision Blizzard has begun the sales of their franchise Call of Duty League next season. The current price is set to be $25 million per spot. And as a frame of reference to kind of compare other franchise leagues, I actually began selling their spots from around the price range of 10 to 20 million, talking more specifically on the OWL and the LCS. More recently in June of 2018, OWL expansion spots did increase to be sold around 30 to 60 million per team. So those original prices where they kind of started at are expected to go up based on the amount of money organizations are making. Now, for those that haven't really been following the saga that has been the CWL franchising rumors, it basically was confirmed a few months ago that they would be kind of working on a Call of Duty franchise league, a city-based system similar to the Overwatch League's format. So, now, I will say this, at first glance, and seeing that report and seeing that tweet pop up on my timeline, I do perceive the $25 million prize spot to be a little bit high. I'll be honest. As a Call of Duty fan, I would love to sit here and say, oh, that's undervalued. It should be higher than that. But in reality, I really think that it is a little bit higher value than I would say, even with my opinions in prior segments and even talking on this show and kind of labeling things out. I feel like that is a little bit high considering where we are at right now in the esport. I will say as well that at the pace everything is expanding at in regards to franchised esports, it is hard to evaluate the sheer difference organizations are seeing considering franchising really hasn't been around for that long. I will counter that, and by also say this, another article that was done by ESPN reported that popular NA organizations prior to the Overwatch League were valued around $100 to $140 million and are now, as of 2018, which is when this article was done, are now evaluated around $160 to $200 million. So you can kind of see a little bit of an increase, and I say a little bit in terms of percentage, not based on overall cash, right? But it definitely seems as if the return is there in other games. Why not Call of Duty, right? Why not this particular esport? Now, I could go on for hours. I could go on for hours talking about why I think Call of Duty has a ton of potential to explode through franchising, because I truly believe that. I truly believe that Call of Duty has a big possibility to explode when it comes into franchising next year. Because one of the things that Call of Duty has done, to kind of compare to other esports, even other franchises out there, is that it's proven longevity. It has proven over years it can withstand, despite being a new title every year. It has proven that it can be a long-living title and that people will continually play it no matter what the results. Even if it's not maybe the most popular game in the world based on the way that it was done, based on the way the developers have maybe kind of orchestrated it, it is still one of the most popular games every single year and has been pretty much for a decade. Now, also, when you think about it, if you were to ask the casual person on the street, have you heard of the name Call of Duty? The average answer would be yes. And you can't say that necessarily about games like League of Legends. You can't say that about all other esports that are currently out there right now. The name Call of Duty has been one of few titles to literally transcend gaming and become a household name. Games like World of Warcraft, GTA, Minecraft, Fortnite, and Call of Duty are all names that maybe not previously involved with gaming, people will recognize. People who don't necessarily are gamers or don't play games every single day, they're going to know those games because of the longevity of them and because of the social media presence that is based around them, right? Because we talk about Fortnite more frequently. Everybody and their mother is talking about Fortnite. Whether or not they've played it, whether or not they realize it, people know the name, they know the game, even if they aren't necessarily a hardcore fan within the gaming atmosphere or within the gaming scene. And by possibly having that name recognition is a huge percentage, honestly, in my opinion, of where that price tag comes from. It comes from notoriety. It comes from the average person most likely knowing that name. And it's to try and appeal to the everyday person, right? That's the goal of franchising. It's to try to appeal to the everyday person, the person who maybe isn't necessarily as involved with gaming, the people who know Minecraft, the people who know GTA, Fortnite, and Call of Duty. It's to appeal to those people. It's to appeal to those people who maybe have somewhat of an idea as for what franchising, what esports kind of is, but don't necessarily know much about it or haven't really had a whole lot of experience with it in the past. And I use this analogy very often. If dad walks into the living room and he turns on the TV and he sees the CWL League next year when it's franchised, what's going to make him stay? What's going to make him continue to watch? When you're doing something new, when it is your very first day of school, what do you look for? You look for your friends. You look for teachers. You look for familiarity. You look for something that you're familiar with to make you feel more comfortable. So what makes Dad stay when he's watching the CWL despite not having a ton of knowledge on the game? Familiarity. He'll immediately get that. First of all, through the name. He's heard of the name before. Okay, what is this Call of Duty League? I've heard the name Call of Duty in the past. And he'll also understand the communication. He'll understand the language of which esports speak, which is the terminology. He'll understand the terms like assault rifles. He'll understand snipers, grenades, bomb sites. All of that isn't hard to understand. And one fact that people have been giving Call of Duty a hard time for the longest time was its simplicity. Oh, Call of Duty is not hard to understand. It's very, very simple. It's super easy to get. And I will say, in a franchise model especially, that isn't a bad thing. I've always been someone to say, okay, well, Call of Duty is not hard to understand. Perfect. Then the average person is going to totally get when they first watch it. It's not going to take them long to understand how exactly Hardpoint works, how Search and Destroy works, how currently Control, previously, Capture the Flag has worked. It's not that difficult. That's not a bad thing. So try and introduce a family member to League of Legends. Try to have them watch Overwatch and have them immediately understand the point of the game. It takes time, right? It takes time to get and to understand the idea of what's happening. In Call of Duty, it is much easier to understand for the average person, especially because of the terminology and because of the simplicity of how the game types work. Now, for me, Call of Duty and franchising can kind of act as the entry for all other esports. If it were to succeed in franchising, for me, one thing that's awesome for COD is that it can be pretty much the start point. It can be the entry to all other franchise esports that are out there for people to kind of get initialized in. If it is simple, if it is basic, well, perfect. This is your level 1 esport. This is the thing that you can watch, that you can understand, and it can open your eyes. It can open the doors to everything else that will be out there in the next few years. So, with price tags continuing to raise the way that they are, $30, $40, $50 million, it seems as if it's going up every single year. It seems as if for me, the price tag will continue to rise for franchise esports. And as the market will continue, if OWL teams pretty much get in primarily, which they do have first access to these spots, organizations will begin to become more top-heavy, considering the difference of teams that are in franchise systems to ones that aren't. I mean, if we talk about a number of different franchise, kind of organizations that are out there, ones who are in the LCS or, whatever you want to kind of call it nowadays, right? But in League of Legends or they're in the Overwatch League. I mean, they're pretty much, their base price, the ability of how much they're worth is much higher than a lot of other organizations that are out there right now. And so I think the $25 million spot is high, considering viewership and my worry of a quick turnaround from developers, because by no means have they been the most prevalent to want to focus on multiplayer more specifically. But this is a huge step that Activision is taking to be the source for esports. I mean, they are taking leaps on the CWL because they want it to be a success because of the capabilities that it has. They're putting their stamp on it. They're writing their signature across the contract and saying, we are focusing on this. And I'm interested to see how titles can live up to that price. I'm excited to see how Infinity Ward, more specifically in talks to developers, will focus pretty much toward a mode that they haven't really previously had as their main priority. They're now focusing on multiplayer. They're going to be the face to try and help evaluate that $25 million prize. They're going to be the face and the people who are pretty much behind that game being made to try and make sure that was worth it. It has to be worth it for the people who are getting in. You want to make sure the viewership is there. You want to make sure that the title, that it's good enough, the multiplayer is fun enough for people to watch and for the competitors to play. Now, I will say one thing that is interesting for me that I've been pretty much holding on to ever since franchising has been announced is that we've never seen a franchise model fail. We have yet to see what happens to an esport after all the money has been thrown into it, after everything has been thrown into a pot. It is at the very highest possible point it can be. What happens after that? And I will say, from an outside perspective, Call of Duty looks to be one of those titles that doesn't have that happen, right? Because it's always consistent. It's always up there. But what happens, for example, if we get into this point, we put Call of Duty on a pedestal, and we see that it maybe isn't necessarily up to that initial value. Maybe it isn't up to what we previously had expected. And one thing that's nice is that money can change that. Money can make things a little bit better. It can make it more fun to watch. So that is one thing that Activision does have behind them, is the massive amount of money that they're valued at and the amount of support that they want to put into another franchise league. But overall, I'm incredibly excited to see the coming months for Call of Duty Esports. This will be a totally different kind of outlook compared to what we've had in the past. This is going to be a much different space that we're walking into. But like I said, I think Activision just took a huge step. I think they basically are claiming that they are in full support of the game, and with the history in the Overwatch League and a backing of a billion-dollar corporation pretty much behind it, it's going to change the esport forever. It absolutely will. It is going to change the esport of Call of Duty as we know it for the future, and I'm excited to help obviously cover that. But if you guys are interested and don't want this conversation to end, because I know that I don't, if you have any opinions or thoughts about the recent reports around CWL franchising, make sure to get involved in the conversation on Twitter by using the hashtag the Esports Dispatch.